The rain drummed against the windows of the 34th precinct like angry fists. Inside, Detective Sarah Mitchell sat at her desk, watching a young black girl walk through the front door. The girl couldn't have been more than 16, wearing a faded school uniform and clutching a worn backpack. Water dripped from her braids onto the scuffed linoleum floor. "Great, another runaway," Officer Jenkins muttered, not bothering to lower his voice. His partner, Officer Rodriguez, chuckled behind his coffee cup, probably here to report her phone stolen or something. Sarah's jaw tightened. She'd been a cop for 20 years and had seen too many good officers turn bitter. But she'd also seen too many young people dismissed before they even had a chance to speak. The girl approached the front desk where Sergeant Thompson sat reading his newspaper. She cleared her throat softly. "Excuse me, sir." Thompson barely looked up. "Kid, if this is about a bike theft, fill out the form over there. If it's about drugs at school, we can't do much without names. Actually, I'm here about the Johnson murder case." The entire station seemed to freeze. The Johnson murder had been front-page news for 3 weeks. A wealthy businessman had been found dead in his penthouse apartment, and despite having 5 detectives on the case, they had no solid leads. Thompson finally looked up, his eyebrows raised. "What about it?" "I think I know who did it." "Officer." Jenkins burst into laughter. "Oh, this is rich. The kid watches too much TV and thinks she's a detective." Several other officers joined in the laughter, their voices echoing off the walls. Sarah stood up from her desk. Something about the girl's calm demeanor made her pause. While everyone else was laughing, the girl stood perfectly still, waiting for the noise to die down. "What's your name?" Sarah asked, walking over. "Maya Washington." "And why do you think you know something about the Johnson case?" Maya opened her backpack and pulled out a manila folder. "Because I've been investigating it myself." The laughter grew louder. "Kid thinks she's Nancy Drew," someone called out. But Sarah noticed something the others didn't. The folder was thick, organized, and Maya's hands weren't shaking, despite the room full of mocking adults. "I work part-time cleaning offices in the downtown district," Maya said, her voice steady. "I clean the building across from Johnson's penthouse every Tuesday and Thursday night." The laughter began to fade. "On the night he died, I saw something through his window, something your detectives missed." Detective Warren, the lead investigator on the Johnson case, pushed his way through the crowd. He was a large man with a reputation for solving tough cases, but the Johnson murder had him stumped. "Look, kid, we've interviewed every person in that building. We've checked every security camera, every phone record, Did you check the building across the street?" Maya interrupted. Warren paused. "What?" "The office building where I work. It's 20 stories high. Johnson's penthouse is on the 15th floor. From the 19th floor of my building, you can see directly into his living room." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. They hadn't checked that building. In all their thorough investigating, they'd focused on Johnson's building and the immediate surroundings, but not the office complex across the street. "That's impossible," Warren said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "The distance is too great." Maya reached into her folder and pulled out a photograph. It was grainy, taken with what looked like a phone camera, but it clearly showed the interior of an apartment. "I took this last week to prove my point. That's Johnson's living room, taken from the 19th floor of the Meridian office complex." The room fell silent. Warren took the photo, his face growing pale. When did you take this?" "Last Tuesday. Same time I was there the night he died. The security guard lets me stay late to finish my work. I usually take a break around 10 p.m. and look out the window. The city looks pretty at night." Sarah's heart was racing. "Maya, what exactly did you see that night?" Maya pulled out a notebook, worn and filled with neat handwriting. "I saw Mr. Johnson arguing with someone." At first, I thought it was just another business meeting, but then the other person got angry. They were pointing at Johnson, waving their arms. Did you see who it was? Warren asked, his earlier smugness completely gone. A woman, tall, with blonde hair. She was wearing a red coat. Warren and Sarah exchanged glances. They'd interviewed Johnson's ex-wife, his business partner, his secretary, and his lawyer. None of them fit that description. But here's what you really need to know, Maya continued, flipping through her notebook. The woman didn't leave through the front door. What do you mean? I watched the building's main entrance after I saw the argument. She never came out. But 20 minutes later, I saw someone on the fire escape. The fire escape. Sarah's mind raced. They'd checked it, of course, but only for signs of forced entry. They hadn't considered that someone might have used it as an exit route. Did you see this person's face? Sarah asked. Maya shook her head. Too dark, too far away. But I saw something else. She turned to another page in her notebook. The person dropped something while climbing down. It fell onto the fire escape landing on the 10th floor. Warren was already reaching for his radio. This is Warren. I need a team at Johnson's building. Fire escape, 10th floor. Look for anything that might have been dropped. As Warren called for backup, Sarah studied Maya more carefully. This wasn't a typical 16-year-old. Her observations were detailed, her notes were organized, and she'd been investigating on her own for weeks. Maya, why didn't you come forward sooner? Maya's composure slipped for the first time. Her voice became quieter. Would you have believed me sooner? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah knew the answer, and it made her ashamed. Probably not. I needed to have proof first, Maya continued. I knew if I came in here with just a story, you'd laugh me out of the building. So I spent 3 weeks going back to that office, watching, taking notes, trying to find evidence. Officer Jenkins, who had been unusually quiet, stepped forward. Evidence of what? Maya reached into her folder one more time and pulled out another photograph. This one was clearer, taken during daylight hours. Evidence that the woman in the red coat works in Johnson's building. The room erupted in surprised voices. Sarah grabbed the photo. It showed a woman entering Johnson's building through a side entrance. She was tall, blonde, and wearing a red coat. I watched the building for 2 weeks after the murder, Maya explained. Same woman, same red coat, same side entrance. She works there. But she's not on any of your witness lists because she uses the service entrance, not the main lobby. Warren's radio crackled. Detective Warren, we found something. There's a gold earring on the 10th floor fire escape landing. Maya smiled for the first time since entering the station. Check if it matches the earrings the blonde woman wears. I saw her 3 times this week. She always wears the same gold hoops. Sarah felt a mixture of amazement and embarrassment. This teenager had potentially solved a case that had stumped 5 experienced detectives. Maya, how did you learn to investigate like this? My grandmother was a private investigator back in the day. She taught me to watch, to listen, and to write everything down. She used to say, details that seem small today might solve big problems. Tomorrow, Warren was already organizing a team to find and question the blonde woman. But Sarah had more questions. Why do you work cleaning offices at night? Where are your parents? Maya's expression grew sad. My mom works 2 jobs during the day. I work at night to help pay for her medicine. She has diabetes, and the insulin is expensive. My dad ... She paused. My dad died when I was 12. The station had grown quiet again, but this time it wasn't from shock. It was from respect. My grandmother always told me that everyone has a purpose, even if they don't know what it is yet. She said sometimes the most ordinary people can do the most extraordinary things. Officer Jenkins approached Maya, his face red with embarrassment. Kid, I owe you an apology. We all do. Maya nodded graciously. It's okay. I'm used to people not taking me seriously. But my grandmother also taught me that you can't let other people's opinions stop you from doing what's right. Sarah's radio buzzed. Detective Mitchell, we've located the suspect. Gold earring is a match. We're bringing her in now. The woman they brought in was indeed tall and blonde. She worked as a night cleaner in Johnson's building, which explained why she wasn't on the daytime staff lists. Her name was Rebecca Torres, and she had been cleaning Johnson's penthouse the night he died. During questioning, the truth came out. Rebecca had been stealing small items from the apartments she cleaned. Johnson had caught her that night, threatened to call the police and have her deported. In a moment of panic, she had pushed him during their argument. Johnson fell, hit his head on the corner of his marble coffee table, and died. Terrified, Rebecca had fled through the fire escape, losing her earring in her hurry to escape. She'd been living in fear for 3 weeks, wondering if anyone had seen her. No one had seen her except Maya. As Rebecca was led away in handcuffs, Warren turned to Maya. Kid, you just solved a murder case that we couldn't crack. Have you ever thought about becoming a police officer? Maya smiled. Actually, I want to be a forensic scientist. I start college next fall. I got a full scholarship. Sarah was amazed. A full scholarship? Where? Columbia University. I've been taking advanced classes at night school while working. My guidance counselor helped me apply. She said my grades in my essay about wanting to help solve crimes made me a strong candidate. The room buzzed with impressed murmurs. This girl had been working nights, taking advanced classes, maintaining perfect grades, and still found time to solve a murder case on her own. Maya, Sarah said, would you be interested in doing an internship with our department while you're in college? We could use someone with your observational skills. Maya's eyes lit up. Really? You'd want me to work here? After what you just did? We'd be lucky to have you. But Maya's story was far from over. As the evening news picked up the story of the teenager who solved the Johnson murder, something unexpected happened. Viewers began calling the station, not just to congratulate Maya, but to report their own unsolved cases. There's a girl who goes missing from our neighborhood every few weeks, one caller said. The police say she's just a runaway, but I think something else is happening. My elderly neighbor's been getting threatening phone calls, said another. The police say it's just pranks, but I'm worried. Maya found herself staying at the station late into the night, listening to these calls and taking notes. Sarah watched her work with growing admiration. You don't have to do this, Sarah told her. You've already done enough for one day. Maya looked up from her notebook. My grandmother used to say that helping people isn't something you do just once. It's something you choose to do every day. Over the next few weeks, Maya became an unofficial consultant for the precinct. She worked on cold cases during her free time, bringing her unique perspective and careful observation skills to problems that had stumped veteran officers. She helped locate a missing teenager who had been hiding at an abandoned warehouse, too scared to come home after witnessing a crime. She identified a pattern of break-ins that led to the arrest of a gang that had been terrorizing elderly residents. She even helped solve a series of vandalism cases at local schools by noticing that all the incidents happened on days when substitute teachers were present. But Maya's biggest impact wasn't just on the cases she solved. It was on the officers themselves. Officer Jenkins, who had laughed at her that first day, became one of her biggest supporters and started spending more time listening to complainants. Instead of dismissing them quickly, realizing that he'd been missing important details because he'd stopped paying attention to people he considered unimportant, and saying to Sarah one day, I've been a cop for 15 years. I thought I knew everything about police work. That kid taught me I've been doing it all wrong. And the changes didn't stop with Jenkins. because the entire precinct began to shift as officers took more time with witnesses, looked at cases from different angles, and started believing people who came forward with information, young, poor, or otherwise overlooked, while Sarah watched these changes with amazement. Knowing Maya had done more than solve a murder case, she'd reminded an entire police station what it meant to serve and protect. And perhaps the most surprising change was in Detective Warren, the veteran investigator who had initially dismissed Maya but began seeking her opinion on difficult cases, started keeping a notebook like hers, and told her one afternoon, "I look for the big, obvious clues. You look for the small, overlooked ones. Turns out the small ones are usually more important." To which Maya smiled and replied, "My grandmother always said the devil is in the details, but so is the truth." And as spring turned to summer, Maya prepared for her freshman year at Columbia, where the precinct threw her a going-away party, something they'd never done for a civilian, let alone a teenager, and Captain Morrison stood to say, "In 30 years of police work, I've seen a lot of people come and go, but I've never seen someone change an entire precinct the way Maya Washington has." Adding, "She reminded us why we became police officers, to help, to listen, and to believe that everyone deserves justice." And when Maya stood to thank them, with tears in her eyes, she said, "When I walked in here 4 months ago, I was just a scared kid who thought she might have information about a crime. I never expected to find a family." And she promised to stay in touch and help with cases when she could, knowing her real legacy wasn't just the crime she helped solve, but the mindset she helped change, that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they have the courage to stand up for what's right. And on her first day at Columbia, she got a call from Detective Mitchell saying, "Maya, we've got a case I think you might be interested in. A young woman claims she saw something suspicious in her building, but the responding officers dismissed her." And Maya, smiling as she crossed campus, said, "Send me the details and make sure someone listens to her first. Really listens." And as she hung up the phone and headed to her first forensic science class, she recalled her grandmother's words, "Sometimes the most ordinary people can do the most extraordinary things." But her story was about to take another turn, because as she entered the lecture hall, she saw a familiar face, Rebecca Torres, the woman she'd helped catch, who was supposed to be in prison. And after class, Maya asked her professor, "Dr. Chun, I need to ask you about one of the students." And Dr. Chun explained Rebecca was in a special program for nonviolent offenders studying to become a paralegal to help other immigrants. And during lunch, Rebecca approached Maya saying, "I know who you are, you're the girl who caught me." And Maya's heart raced, but Rebecca said, "Thank you. If you hadn't found that earring, I would have lived with that guilt forever." And explained that prison gave her time to realize she had been stealing to send money home, that she had lost her way, and now wanted to help others before they made her mistakes. And she shared something else. "The night Mr. Johnson died, I wasn't the only one there. The night security guard, Carlos Mendez, saw me leave, saw me drop the earring, but he never came forward because he's undocumented and has 3 kids." And Maya called Detective Mitchell and said, "Sarah, I need to talk to you. There's something new about the Johnson case." And back at the 34th precinct, they all listened as Maya explained and said, "We shouldn't approach him like police officers. We should approach him like people who want to help." And so they did, connecting Carlos to immigration lawyers and earning his trust and testimony, which confirmed the full story. And the moment taught the department a powerful lesson: helping people do right is more effective than punishing them for doing wrong. And Maya continued to consult on cold cases, help other departments, and even identified a serial predator by recognizing crimes were happening when police were stretched thin, proving her knack for seeing not just what happened, but when and why. And her senior thesis on community-based policing earned recognition from the Department of Justice. But instead of joining them, Maya returned to New York to help train officers in what the 34th Precinct had learned. Because for her, the work wasn't about climbing the ladder, but lifting others from the ground. Why? Detective Mitchell asked when Maya called to tell her about her decision. Because the 34th precinct gave me a chance when no one else would. Now I want to help other precincts give chances to other people like me. Maya's first assignment back in New York was developing a training program called Community Voices. The program taught officers how to listen to and work with community members who might normally be overlooked or dismissed. The program was revolutionary. Instead of just teaching officers how to investigate crimes, it taught them how to prevent crimes by building relationships with community members. Officers learned to see teenagers like Maya not as potential troublemakers, but as potential allies, with valuable observations and insights. They learned to view immigrants like Carlos and Rebecca not as threats to be managed, but as community members to be protected and supported. The results were dramatic. Crime rates in participating precincts dropped significantly, but more importantly, community trust in law enforcement increased substantially. Maya found herself traveling across the country, training officers in departments from small rural towns to major metropolitan areas. Each group of officers she worked with came away with the same lesson. Effective policing required seeing the humanity in every person they encountered. During one training session in Chicago, a veteran officer raised his hand. "Dr. Washington, this all sounds great in theory, but what about when you encounter someone who really is dangerous? What about when community policing meets real criminal activity?" Maya smiled. She had been waiting for this question. "Let me tell you about something that happened to me last month." She told the officers about a case she had been consulting on in Philadelphia. A series of robberies in a low-income neighborhood had the community on edge. The perpetrator seemed to know exactly when people would be alone and vulnerable. The police had increased patrols, but the robberies continued. They were focusing on catching the criminal after the crimes occurred. I suggested a different approach. Instead of just increasing security, Maya recommended that the police work with community members to understand the social dynamics of the neighborhood. They discovered that the robberies were being committed by someone who knew the community. Well, someone who understood people's routines and schedules. Through community meetings and relationship building, they learned that a local teenager had been providing information to the robber in exchange for drug money. The teenager was addicted and desperate, and he knew his neighbor's patterns from growing up in the area. The traditional approach would have been to arrest the kid and charge him as an accomplice, Maya explained. But the community approach was different. We got him into treatment, helped his family access support services, and worked with him to identify the actual robber. The teenager became a key witness in the case, and his testimony led to the arrest of an adult who had been exploiting vulnerable kids throughout the neighborhood. The same community member who was part of the problem became part of the solution, Maya concluded. But that only happened because we chose to help him instead of just punish him. The Chicago officer nodded thoughtfully. So even when community policing meets real criminal activity, the community can still be the key to solving it. Exactly. Every criminal lives in a community. Every crime affects a community. If you work with the community, you'll solve more crimes and prevent more problems than if you work against it. Maya's training programs became so successful that they were adopted as standard curriculum in police academies nationwide. The Maya Washington method became synonymous with effective community policing and crime prevention. But for Maya, the real measure of success wasn't in the awards she received or the recognition she gained. It was in the stories that came back to her from officers and community members whose lives had been changed by her approach. She heard from Officer Rodriguez, who had been one of the officers laughing at her that first day at the 34th precinct. He had become a youth outreach coordinator and was working with teenagers to create after-school programs that kept kids engaged and off the streets. She heard from Rebecca Torres, who had graduated from her paralegal program and was now working with an immigration law firm, helping other immigrants navigate the legal system without resorting to desperate measures. She heard from Carlos Mendez, who had received his green card and was now training other security guards on how to work with law enforcement while protecting their communities. And she continued to hear from Detective Mitchell, who had been promoted to captain and was implementing Maya's community policing methods throughout the entire NYPD. You know what the best part is? Captain Mitchell told Maya during one of their regular check-ins. The officers love this approach. They became cops to help people, and now they feel like they actually are helping people instead of just arresting them. Maya's approach had created a positive cycle. Officers felt better about their work, which made them more effective at their jobs. Community members trusted officers more, which made them more willing to cooperate with investigations. Fewer crimes were committed because people had better support systems, which meant officers could focus on prevention rather than just reaction. But perhaps Maya's greatest achievement was the simplest one. She had proven that one person, regardless of their age, race, or background, could change entire systems if they had the courage to speak up and the persistence to keep working for change. 10 years after she first walked into the 34th precinct as a scared teenager, Dr. Maya Washington was invited back to speak at the precinct's anniversary celebration. As she looked out at the room full of officers, community members, and city officials, she saw faces that reflected the changes she had helped create. The room was more diverse than it had been 10 years earlier, both in terms of the officers who served and the community members who felt welcome there. The atmosphere was different too. Instead of the tension and suspicion that had once characterized police-community relations, there was a sense of partnership and mutual respect. When I walked into this precinct 10 years ago, Maya began her speech. I was just a teenager who thought she might have information about a crime. I never imagined that one conversation would lead to a lifetime of working to build bridges between law enforcement and the communities they serve. She paused, looking around the room at the faces of people whose lives had been touched by her work. But I've learned that change doesn't happen because of one person or one moment. Change happens because people choose every single day to treat each other with respect, to listen to each other's stories, and to work together toward solutions that benefit everyone. As Maya concluded her speech, she thought about her grandmother, who had passed away the previous year. Her grandmother had lived to see Maya graduate from college, earn her doctorate, and become a nationally recognized expert in community policing. "I'm proud of you, baby girl," her grandmother had said during their last conversation. "You took the lessons I taught you and made them bigger than I ever imagined." Now as Maya looked out at the crowd of people whose lives had been changed by those same lessons, she knew her grandmother's legacy would continue to grow and spread, touching lives and communities far beyond anything either of them could have imagined. The officers back at the precinct continued to use the lessons she taught them. They listened more carefully. They observed more closely. They believed in people who others might dismiss. And sometimes late at night when they were working difficult cases, they would ask themselves, what would Maya notice that we're missing? Usually that question led them to the answer they needed. Maya's story spread beyond the precinct, beyond New York City, beyond the state. Police departments across the country began implementing new training programs focused on community engagement and careful observation. They called them Maya protocols, systematic approaches to listening to all witnesses and examining cases from multiple perspectives. But Maya herself remained focused on her studies and her future. She knew that the Johnson case was just the beginning of her journey. She had found her purpose: to use science and careful observation to help solve crimes and bring justice to those who needed it most. Her grandmother would have been proud. Years later, when Maya had become Dr. Maya Washington, one of the country's leading forensic scientists, she would return to the 34th precinct to speak to new recruits. She would tell them about the importance of listening, of observing, of believing that everyone has something valuable to contribute. And she would always end her talks with the same message her grandmother had taught her. You don't have to be extraordinary to do extraordinary things. You just have to be willing to care enough to try. The young officers would listen, inspired by the woman who had proven that courage and determination can overcome any obstacle. They would go out into their communities with renewed purpose, ready to listen to every voice and investigate every lead, no matter how unlikely it might seem. Because they had learned from Maya Washington that justice doesn't care about age, race, or social status. Justice only cares about truth. And truth, Maya had taught them, can come from the most unexpected places. All you have to do is be willing to listen. And as Maya stood outside the precinct one final time, watching the sun set over the city she helped transform, she knew her story had only just begun, but more importantly, she had sparked a legacy of justice, compassion, and community that would continue long after her footsteps faded from those halls. From a determined teenager with a notebook to a national voice for change, Maya had proven that even the quietest observer can shift the loudest systems. Her journey reminds us all that truth can come from the most unexpected voices, and when we truly listen, change becomes inevitable. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep these powerful stories alive. Every click helps us spread the message that one person truly can make a difference.